Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for participating in this conversation and celebration of fatherhood. And we have some very, very special guests here on our weekly web series with Essex County Surrogate's Court. I'm gonna give you a couple of seconds. So if you're on social media right now, please share this conversation with your colleagues. And so I'm gonna turn my phone down, be a practitioner of, we want to share with your friends because we think this is a very informative conversation, and we want to make sure that we have your participation as well. So give you a couple of seconds. Please share on your social media page and share. All right. So my watch party is start and ready to begin. Again, good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to say, first off, thank you for joining us on this weekly conversation. The past few weeks, we had conversations regarding adoptions, wills. We had conversations regarding administrations. And so this weekend is very special for a number of us. This week is Father's Day. And in celebration of Father's Day, we thought it was important for our court to have a conversation on multiple topics, and we thought this topic about Father's Day is important to bring on some important people who are doing work in our community, who are providing resources to our families, and also can give you some things to consider, as well as we celebrate you as being a father and participant. But let me also introduce my co-host, Devera McDougall. He's a proud graduate, of many schools in Newark, from science to Rutgers, undergrad at Rutgers Law, as well as a CPA by training. But he's a deputy surrogate for our court, Devera McDougall.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and viewing today.
Good. Let me introduce the person who approves our budget. Who's a friend and a mentor of mine, and who's also a coach. By practice, and he's a proud father of two beautiful girls. One is an entrepreneur, another one is a consultant doing some amazing work. Freeholder Rufus Johnson.
Well, Altamik, it's always a pleasure to help represent you in anything that you're doing, because you do a fine job with it. And I'm just glad to be on, especially as you mentioned, it's Father's Day weekend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm gonna bring on. Also wanted to introduce a young lady who came at the last minute, but is going to bring some information regarding adoptions, and so she's going to talk about adoptions and talk about the things that we can either do to prepare ourselves, or those who are adopted parent. Where are the resources? How can I strengthen what I do and make it better? So I want to introduce Vanessa Suavo. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Suazo.
Suazo. I am a field support supervisor out of adoption operations with the Department of Children and Families. And I actually work specifically over Essex County, just helping guide adoption practice across the county. So thank you for including me in this conversation.
Thank you for being a participant. I want to introduce a friend who is a person that I've met, just doing community work, whether it's doing occupied schools, whether it's doing just trying to find resources for young people. And so having Carlos participate in this conversation is very, very important. He's a CEO and president, Big Brother, Big Sister. And we're going to hopefully, have a conversation how we can get you involved, because there are a lot of young men who need some mentors. So let me introduce Carlos. I'm not going to pronounce his last name because I always mess it up. This is Carlos.
I appreciate it. It's always a blessing to be in your space, Al-Tariq. And you're right. I know a lot of the issues of the day are about the minute and the moment, but the real work is done on the marathon with a long-term view. And so we've been in each other's spaces and places throughout the journey. So it's a blessing. We had a Big Brothers and Sisters based in Newark. We cover Essex, Hudson, and Union counties later. But I'm grateful to be here in the spirit of what it's all about, Father's Day, celebrating our men and fathers in our community for sure.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. We also decided to also increase our scope to have an author, and also a consultant, as well as a person who I met when I was at Howard University. We bumped into each other at Carver Hall, and we've been friends ever since. He's from Detroit, and he stayed in DC. Never went back. He didn't go back to Detroit. You know, he decided to help the young men and women in DC. And he's the author of a book called, I'm gonna promote your book right now, The Burning House. It's called The Burning House: Educating Black Boys in Modern America. Make sure you pick it up if you can. He's my friend Desmond Williams.
Thank you for having me, Al Tariq. And you know, it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you. I am a former teacher and a principal, but I come to this work thinking of what happens to Black and brown boys in schools that disenfranchises them in school, but ultimately disenfranchises them from all public institutions, which makes the work of us, right, that much more difficult when it comes to how do we promote the blessings of fatherhood, and how do we promote family in a healthy way, to the degree that it doesn't seem like something that those other people do. So I thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to learning and breaking bread with you all.
Got it. Thank you for participating. DeVero, can you do me a favor? Can you give, because we have a lot of people who are here for the first time, can you please give a brief overview? What is the Surrogate Court? What do we do?
So let me start with what the surrogate is, your title. So the surrogate in New Jersey is a constitutional officer, which simply means that the New Jersey Constitution created a office to do two things. One, to be a judge of probate part, and to be the deputy clerk of the for the Superior Court probate part. So simply, in essence, in layman's terms, what that means is we are responsible for probating wills when there is a will. If there is no will, we are responsible for helping get an administrator appointed to the decedent's estate. We do adult guardianships. So when you have a loved one who does not have the ability to care for themselves, somebody needs to be appointed to care for them and their assets. So we are responsible for the paperwork to do adult guardianship. We are responsible for approximately $36 million in minors funds. So when somebody's under 18, they can't legally hold money. And so if there is no other mechanism set up for that money to put in a trust, it would go to our trust. We hold that until they're 18. And one of the, I'm not going to say the last thing, but one of the important things for today's topic that we also do, we are one of the starting points for adoption. So we get adoption applications that get processed here in order for it to be submitted to family court. So somebody can have the fortunes of adopting a young man or young woman, and they can also have the fortunes of having a loving family. So, and that's why we are happy to have this conversation about fatherhood, because we do get involved in parenting in general. So yes, so fatherhood is how we are, adoption is how we connected to this conversation.
Thank you, DeVero. I'm going to start off with a softball question. What does fatherhood mean to you? So whoever wants to start off, what does fatherhood mean to you? Yes. Anyone can.
I'll jump in. I am a newlywed. I've been married almost 6 years, come June 21st. But I have two beautiful daughters who at some point are going to invade this conversation. So that's my caveat before we even get warmed up and lathered up. They're going to invade this space very soon. But I think for me, having had the good fortune of growing up with my father, I didn't realize until we brought my first daughter home that fatherhood is really the essence of God, and that it's much more than protecting. It's much more than teaching. It's a spiritual principle of guiding people, your children, until there is no end of fatherhood. My daughters are almost 5 and 2 years old, but from my perspective, I think staying grounded in a spiritual the spirituality of the work is super important, and it makes some of the trivialities that we deal with, it brings those things into focus. So
I'd like to chime in on that now. You know, me being raised by a mother from a family of 9, I have 5 brothers and 4 sisters, and growing up without dad in the house. I have 2 beautiful daughters. One is 32, and the other is 27. That I made a pact and a promise to myself that they would never be without one of us, without both of us together raising them. See, because I grew up here in the city of Newark, and as I grew up, there was a lot of broken families. And the high school that I went to one down in the Ironbound of Newark called Eastside. I got to relate to Portuguese, Italian, and everything else, a heavy mixture. And I got to go to some of their houses because I was an athlete. And when I went to their houses, they had a mother and a father there. And everything seemed so great to see this and to see the things that they had as a couple, that it ingrained in me that, hey, when I do, I'm going to stay with it. And I love my daughters to death. I love Al Tariq to death. Al Tariq was one of my little mentees that I grabbed a hold of. I was coaching basketball, baseball, and I did Pop Warner football for my entire life, at least 21 years or more. And I've shipped many, many young people to college to get a taste of it, because that's what I had to do. I was mentored by people in the community, by people that seen I had a little talent, and they pulled me away from my community slowly but surely through the sports, through me coming to their homes, hanging out with them and their kids, them trying to show me a better way, because they knew I didn't have a father. So even with Carlos, with the mentorship, I understand that wholeheartedly. And as fathers, we must grab somebody else's kid and be a father figure to them, because look at our communities today. Look at Newark, for instance. Look at East Orange, Irvington, and this Essex County area. A lot of these kids are crying and begging for a mentor, somebody that can help bring them through. And I'm kind of at the tip of that mountain up there. And I wanted to make sure that I have some guys coming behind me that had a taste of what mentoring and what it was like to work with young people to continue it. Because let's face it, I can't do it forever.
So Rufus, what you just said obviously spoke to my heart. So for me, what does fatherhood mean to me? It means love at its highest form. It's unconditional. It's not just for the moment, it's for the long haul, unconditionally onto another. And so Rufus, frankly, I had the blessing of people pouring into my life when I didn't have that person in my life, no father, right? So for me, I fully appreciate the power of it when I didn't have it. And the blessing was that my mom, single parent from houses to make ends meet in a beautiful community that essentially adopted us, and every one of my mom's clients became my mentors. But what fatherhood means to me is not necessarily about the biology or the bloodline. It's about love, and so for me, that's been my testimony. So the power of the day. But I do definitely want to affirm the fact that there's so many wonderful fathers out there who are biologically blessed to have their own children and are pouring into their children and struggling with it and loving on it, and that's beautiful. And then frankly, we want to lift that up. We want to have that be the focus of the day. But the story too is that far too often is the case in our communities and personal testimony, as well as the work that we do. We have so many boys and so many girls too that don't have that active biological father and need that unconditional love. So I also want to pivot off of what Desmond said too. I think it's on a higher level. It's that spiritual principle. What does fatherhood mean? It's something blessed. It's something different than just transactional. It's just not something that just kind of falls into your space. It's something that's about something at a whole other level. And so for me, it's the day is a celebration, but it's also historically been a mixed day for my personal journey. Frankly, I have a tradition, and again, it maybe just speaks to me, but I know we've got so many littles in our community, in our program, that this resonates. You know, for me, it's affirming my mother and the stability of her and her stability in our chaotic moments of growing up sometimes. And so we have this phrase at home. It's like "Happy Father's Day, Mom," right? But then also appreciating and valuing those men who step into that void. And I'll close by offering one example. Frankly, my grandfather, he was in Ecuador. My mom was here. We were the only ones in this country on the side. And he Ecuador to be with us because he really valued the adage that you can't be what you can't see. And he was in our home, and he didn't speak the language. You know, he barely understood the context of being in the United States. And for him, it was like a cold country. The winters were like frigid. It was like crazy for him. He was not, but he realized the power of just his presence. And that to me expressed and articulated unconditionally what it meant to just be present in someone's life. And frankly, he and I didn't talk very often, but I just knew he was always home. And so for me, fatherhood is about stepping up, even in the space of a void, whenever, you know, you see that opportunity. So it's about unconditional love and filling that gap when you see it.
Very well said, Carlos. Very well said. And I want to say this on the record here while we're all here. Al Tariq Kinney, I had him volunteering coaching with me with kids and stuff. Al Tariq Kinney had such a love for these kids that every time I seen them, the car was full of them. They eating donuts and everything else. And one thing I've always said to Al Tariq Kinney is that wait until you have your own. And you know something? It's a joy to watch him when I see the Facebook and everything else. I don't have to be there to see that and to see the way he is interacting with his children. It makes me so proud to see it because of the fact that I know I was like that at one point. But to see him interacting the way he does with him, that's why Al Tariq Kinney, I am one of your fans. You know
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I learn from the best, right? I watch how you father and how many of you guys coach and how many of you guys educate, and I just follow your lead. So thank you for being a guide for us. Vanessa, what does fatherhood mean to you?
Well, yeah, I definitely want to speak from the perspective of being a daughter, you know, and being a wife. So for me, I've been very blessed to still have, you know, my dad, who's been very involved throughout my life, and him and my mom have been together for 42 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so, you know,
I gotta catch up.
I've been very blessed to have, you know, a household where I always lived with both my parents, and honestly, having my dad just as an unconditional support, someone that I can talk to, someone who always made me feel protected and loved, who wanted the best for me, you know, and having so many friends during my childhood just in my home because they seeked his mentorship and they seeked his advice. It was great to be able to see that I had, right, a dad that other individuals could look up to and who felt, you know, that he could be a strong inspiration for them. You know, and then also my husband, we have 2 children. My son is 10 and my daughter is 6, and he's very much involved, you know, in their lives, in their care. And, you know, my daughter is definitely a daddy's girl who wants nothing but daddy all the time. So it's great to be able to be lucky and be able to see how important fathers are. I mean, and on the other end, just talking about, you know, adoption, right? And how important fathers are to the adoption process. I've been able to work in the adoption field through the Department of Children and Families for 12 years at this point. and have been able to work as a worker and see families that get finalized through the adoption process and how important fathers are, right, in the roles of our children. In some families where there's only single fathers who finalize and create their families with youth. And I get to see the blessing of a new family created and how, those fathers take that role so personally and know how important it is and love these children and raise them and mentor them. So just even seeing it through the adoption lens, fatherhood is so important to so many of our children and our vulnerable youth. And we're always obviously looking for individuals and fathers who would be interested in being assessed and potentially adopting children, because they also have the ability to raise children and be very strong mentors in their lives.
Powerful. DeVero, what does fatherhood mean to you?
I will just echo what everybody said, and I'm just going to keep it simple. I have my kids are adults now. I won't be like Rufus and tell their ages. And so I have 3 grown kids, and for me, fatherhood was always about being present in their lives, whether that was not just physically. I just wanted to be present, and so for me, that's simply what fatherhood was all about for me, and everything else that the other gentleman said, and Vanessa said, I agree with. My mentor, I would say this, was my mother. So I learned to be a father simply by being a parent, and that's just kind of sort of how I looked at it. Be a parent, and there was no manual, so just use common sense and love is what it took, and I try to continue that, and hopefully they realized that when they were growing up. I also want I don't want to be remiss and not mention my nephew. His name is Shamik Benders, and he has 3 young boys, and I'm impressed every time I see him with his kids because he is present every day in their life, and he loves them unconditionally. So I must mention my nephew Shamik Benders is an excellent father.
So it's interesting because I know we know each other offline, most of us, and we have conversations privately, and also the institutions you guys run. And so Carlos mentioned, something I thought, which is I want to get some more elaboration on, is that void that exists when fathers aren't around, and it's our responsibility, whether we see it formally or informally, to step into that role. DeVero's done it with his nephew. Ruben's done it, on a continuous basis. Desmond could write books on this stuff. But in terms of institutions, why? I know, Carlos, we talked about the need for mentors in the lives of young people. Can you give me a little bit more information as to, in terms of the mentoring aspect of it? Why is that critically important? Do you need mentors? In terms of filling those roles where fathers may not exist?
Absolutely. So it's not lost on me that we're in a moment right now that the tension, rightly so, is on big things, and those big things, though, frankly, will trickle down to action done on a regular basis in our community, one person at a time, local stuff. So we focus on what's happening on CNN and all these things, but for me, the real power that can be unleashed is needs locally manifested. And so for us, we have several hundred children on a wait list, particularly boys. 400 boys on a wait list in Essex, Hudson, and Union counties. And frankly, I think it would be a lot more if we advertise more. We don't want to have a long list just for the sake of it. We don't want to overpromise and under-deliver. And so we have a high need in our community. Yet we also have a more of a need for more men to step up. And so in our program, very specifically, there's a gap there. Now we see that, independent academic research shows that negative things decrease and positive things increase with a one-to-one structured mentoring program. And there are a lot of blessings in our community, Newark Mentoring. There's a lot of great organizations that do the work that we do as well, because Big Sisters just happens to be one alongside many great organizations. But I tell you, if 10% of the Newark adult population were to sign up to be a mentor to children in our community, we can have every single child in our community with champion in their corner with a one-to-one structured relationship through a mentoring program. So we don't have to think about the challenges of the day. We can simply just think, you know what, we can't fix it all, but we can figure one thing out. We can mentor one person. We can step into that relationship. And again, research shows that negative things decrease when you have a person accountable to you, that you're accountable with in this one-to-one relationship. So drug abuse decreases, truancy decreases, negative, infractions on the JJC and juvenile justice system decrease with one-to-one mentoring. And then the positive things increase, the social emotional developments that we surveyed before and after. And again, at the end of the day, it's really the power of what we talked about earlier. You can't be what you can't see. And so sometimes our young people just need to see that and be that. Let's not overthink the power of unconditional love. Let's not overthink the power of being present in the life of a child. And so, an example I have is early on in 2008 when I was start launching Big Brothers Big Sisters. Someone came to me, he's like, "Listen, I'm just a contractor. I graduated from this university, but I don't have a PhD. I don't have overthinking what he needed to be." I said, just be present. And so I said, do what you do, pick up your little, live up to those commitments, and articulate by your actions what it is to just be present and fulfilling your responsibility. So he would take his little to Home Depot every weekend. That's what he did normally, right? As a contractor, he would load up on the weekend for the week of work ahead. And his little brother absolutely loved just being in his presence. He didn't really talk much about it, but we knew, because we have a structured program where our mentor managers, our amazing staff, they kind of pulled this out of the little. They said, I just love hanging out with him. And it was the littlest thing, that was the simplest thing for that mentor, and it filled a void for that young man. He had positivity in his house. He had a great grandma, but no father. And so he was in the glory of being in front of that man, his big brother, doing the simplest thing. He just went to Home Depot. And so we just said, you don't have to, for the call to action, frankly, is you don't have to change life to change it, right? You can simply just do what you do, and then just be present in the life of the child. So there is a gap in our community. And we see that because a third of our kids at Big Brothers Big Sisters come to refer to by DCP, right? So that's the state social work system. That means that you need to know about all the details in that child's life. You just need to know that something crazy is going on, that the state has to involve themselves in that child's experience. And then frontline social workers, more often, here are a number of things that we think will help your child, including the stability of a regular caring adult in your life. And that's what we try to structure.
Desmond, to tie into what Carlos said in terms of the number of young people who are, in need of mentors, but also, you actually had a school in Washington D.C. that strictly focused on Black boys, Black and brown boys. Can you elaborate on what's the the importance of mentoring? What's the importance of male mentoring in terms of more men specifically to get involved in the lives of children who need them as well, as an educator and also as a school principal?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I think I would want to back up and talk about something that I mentioned offline in terms of what happens to children, particularly Black and brown boys, when they go to school every day. And it's rather innocuous, but you're talking about a teaching force that's 80% white, a curriculum that's teaching children about European and white heroes. The way that children are tested is Eurocentric in nature. And over time, what you essentially have is Black and brown boys trying to figure out what their place is in this particular school system. And the research tells us around 4th or 5th grade, students have made decisions about how they fit into the context of school. And for a lot of our children, particularly Black boys, they say, this is not a place for me. And as they continue to matriculate, and once they get into high school, they have been essentially eviscerated to the degree that they don't believe that they fit anywhere in school, but they also don't believe they fit anywhere in society's institutions. So there's a lack of Black men in church. You can walk in any church in the Black community, and you would be hard pressed to find a critical presence of Black men between the ages of 18 and 40, right? We're not voting. We're not. I mean, and I'm not speaking in terms of statistical terms, but we're not necessarily engaged in voting. Depending on what data points you look at, approximately 60% of our Black homes have minors who do not live with Black parents, even though there is substantial data that tells us that fathers are involved. They just may not be living with mom, or they may not be married. So I think looking at this from the school aspect, there's a disenfranchisement that happens because systemically we look at schools, or school is based on Eurocentric principles, and then our children, right, are saying, I don't fit here, so maybe I don't fit anywhere in society. And if you look at the media images that are portrayed, it's easy to see, right? It's easy to see why we tend to gravitate towards sports and entertainment. As Jay-Z said, until they give us something besides sports and entertainment, I'm waiting for my raiment, right? I mean, that is why you're looking at what Carlos mentioned in terms of this need for critical mentorship. And I think all of us can say, we had strong parents, but we also had strong mentors, right? It's really not an either or proposition. I can think of my Uncle Greg, who is probably 15 years younger than my mother, but he was someone who I could talk to about anything. He took me to my first basketball camp. He taught me how to talk to girls. He taught me a lot of things that just I didn't necessarily feel comfortable talking with my father. And I really didn't even feel comfortable talking to them with Uncle Greg, but he felt comfortable bringing it up to me. So it was really easy to have some of these conversations. So I think that to answer your question, Tariq, when we talk about this need for critical mentorship, we're talking about healing a broken village.
Yes.
And if we're saying, I have two parents, like I grew up with two parents, and my father's story is your father's story, Rufus, to the degree that my father's father was in the military, and when he was in the home, he caused complete chaos. And my father said, you know what? I will be there. I will be present for my children. But be that as it may, my dad was there, but I still needed someone to say, you know what, Desmond, it's okay that you had a 2.1 GPA this semester. You're going to get it next time. So, I think we have to look at the larger context of why these conversations are important and deep dive into how can we fix some of these structural issues that we see. Because going back to what you said again, Carlos, this is a marathon.
Yeah,
this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And if we don't act differently, then in 25 years we'll be having this conversation again, wondering what can we do to connect youth to mentors who can work to heal and fix this broken village.
So that ties into in Rufus. I've met Rufus on multiple platforms, and I think one of the most important things that I've worked with him was a mentoring program by way of basketball in the West Ward community in Ivy Hill Park, and then also we had a program at Essex County College mentoring. Rufus. Freeholder Rufus. In terms of what does that mean? Like, what does that look like? And some of the success stories that you've had, I know you've had, an internationally recorded rapper that was in your softball program, put off from Lords of the Underground. You've actually had a number of people. Redman, I think, was in your program.
Yeah,
we love the Lord. We love the Lord. I had to take the dinner.
So So from a mentoring aspect of it, I would give some context as to what does this actually mean, in your capacity, being on the front lines through the work that you've done.
Well, as you know, since 1982, I've been out there running programs for our young people. And one thing about our young people, it's a thing where they've got to feel your spirit. Your spirit has got to be right for them to want to follow and to embrace what you're trying to do and to follow you in the things you're trying to do. And I had to learn that a long time ago, that my spirit, because a couple of people have told me, said, Rufus, your spirit is in the right place. But I really didn't pay too much attention to that, because I was just trying to fulfill a void that I had growing up, that it took mentors, people outside of that, my family, that helped guide me to where I'm at today. Now, I'm going to throw this out here. I've been working in government for 40 years. I did 16 years with a West Ward councilman. That's how I developed most of the programs that I did. I did 17 years as a state senator's chief of staff.
Wow.
And I've been elected. This is going to be my 5th term on July 7th. So I've had an abundance of working with a lot of young people and to feel their spirit and to feel their hearts. All they're looking for is some love.
That's right.
They want you to feel like you love them.
That's right.
And at first, they'll try to fight off your love. But with time, consistency, Carlos, consistency,
Yeah.
that's when they see that your spirit is in the right place and they will follow you. It means so much to me to see my Black and brown young brothers doing the right thing and going to, like, I've been pushing a lot of them to go to college, although I know some of them are not going to complete it, but to go get that experience at one of those Black colleges so that you can see other African Americans just like you that's thriving, because that helps. That helps. But here in Newark, we do need to re-inject the mentorship, because when I grew up, I was a basketball, baseball, and football player. But there were so many people that I gotta say that were the ones that anchored me to be the me that I am today, because they wanted me for what I had, the skills I had. They knew I didn't have a father at home. They knew I was from a family like that, and they wanted to help me. And we've got to not only take care of our kids, but we've got to reach down and grab a kid next door to me. I'm going to give you this one instance of a situation that happened to me many, many years ago. I was living on Brookdale Avenue in Newark. I was working for the councilman. I had went and bought this Lincoln Versailles. It looked like a Granada with the tire rim in the ring and the tire rack in the back. Hey, stop laughing, you guys. Stop laughing. But I used to be out there waxing it and cleaning it on Fridays or Sundays.
Every day.
And let me tell you, there was a kid that lived diagonally across the street from me. And there was some other kids on the neighborhood. They used to always come when I'm washing the car, throwing balls and all of this here. And I used to always say to them, hey, man, take that down a little bit further down the street. One of those kids from that used to always ask me, can he help me? I used to say, no, because, I'm trying to get this done. Don't you know this one kid went to prison about 3 or 4 times and everything else. And I saw him on South Orange Avenue in Newark, because where I worked, we were on the corner of Sanford and South Orange Avenue, where our office was for senator. And he said to me, when we were in the restaurants. I'll never forget this. We were sitting in the Halal restaurant on Smith and South Orange Avenue. And this young man said to me, he said, "You know something, Rufus? Man, I used to see you when you used to be out there waxing that car when I was little, and you used to always chase me away. I used to always want to just help you do it." And I thought to myself later on, wow, maybe I was the cause of this brother going through some of the things he went through, because I didn't allow him in my comfort to work with me. Maybe that could have been something that could have gotten him going on the right track. At a young age. He was very young then, but then he's a grown man telling me this.
Yeah.
And it hurt me inside, because he could have been one that I added to the others that I had worked with. But at the time, I was being selfish, thinking about my own.
Yeah.
And see, that's what a lot of men and families are thinking about today. Instead of helping mentor some others, all they're thinking about is their family and how they're raising their family and the structure they're putting together for their family. You know?
Yeah, we've become very tribal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me tie in. I want to tie in Vanessa, because I know Vanessa does some important work, in terms of, getting young people into a home, with a dad, through the adoption process, through the adoption route. From your experience, Vanessa, how many of those children are looking for, how many children do we have going through those agencies that are looking for a home? Those are success stories, the advocacy work that's needed, resources they need to use in terms of, there's the children who are by birth, and there's the children who go by pathway of adoptions. Can you explain that a little bit more, give some context to that?
Sure. I actually first wanted to go back to the piece about like systematic challenges that Desmond was talking about. Just talk a little bit about, what the Department of Children and Families, the Division of Child Protection and Permanency, that's our state agency in child welfare in New Jersey. For short, we're called DCP&P, so I'll just refer to it that way. But talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing first around fathers. So, DCP&P has been very transparent just in looking at our processes and recognizing that we've, had some flaws in engaging fathers in the work that we've been doing. So there's definitely in the last couple of years been just a look and shift around the work we do with fathers to involve them in case planning and ensuring that we're getting their voice, right, regarding the planning for their children and those pieces, because for a long time, unfortunately, we haven't really utilized, right, or gone to work with fathers in the way that we really needed to. And we've been very active in trying to change that, to ensure that we're now speaking with fathers, including them in planning, looking at them to be primary caregivers for some of our children, when those situations allow. So I just wanted to acknowledge, and obviously we continue to work on that. That's something that needs to have continual focus as we continue to progress in the work that we're doing. The other piece also is we're looking at the disproportionality, and we know this of Black boys specifically in the foster care. And unfortunately, a lot of them, remain in the system with a goal of adoption and then age out because we're unable to find families who are committed to fostering and adopting Black teenage boys. So, in Essex County, I'll speak to Essex County because that's primarily where I work out of. We have over, at this point, I would say over 50 boys who are within the different 6 Essex offices who have what we call select home adoption goals, which means that we haven't identified anyone to adopt them. So I think it's important to be able to share that information, that we're always actively looking for families who are willing, right, to show interest and care for and adopt our teenage boys who remain in the system. And unfortunately, many of them have been in the system for an extended period of time. And again, that the system challenges are very much a piece of that, right? Where we understand that, unfortunately, Black children enter care at a disproportionate rate compared to other children. So So those are conversations that the department continues to have about how to address these issues to ensure that we don't continue to have these problems. But I think it's important to acknowledge again how many youth, not just in Essex County, but across the state, are still hoping to have a family that they can turn to that will ultimately be their home, who will continue to be parents and mentors to them. We have a large amount of children who are in our foster care system who need families, who need someone who's going to show patience and love, and be there for them. And and I always try to tell families who are expressing interest that, you have to anticipate that our youth have trauma and experiences that, like Mr. Johnson, you were saying, they're not going to come with open arms, right? There's going to be challenges, but we need to be patient with them because they've had several experiences and rejection and grief that impacts how they can adjust to families. So it's just very important to continue to consider fostering and adoption for our youth who need families and who need to feel protected and loved and cared for. I've had the blessing to be able to see various types of families finalize adoptions. I've had adoptions of children who were teenagers. In Essex, we've had adoptions across the state of youth over the age of 18, because you can finalize adoptions up till the age of 21 through the Department of Children and Families. So, and obviously when youth are adults, they can consent to their own adoptions. Adoption is possible even as a young adult. So it's just important to be able to know and consider caring for some of these vulnerable youth who really do need continued care. I always say 21 is a great number. We think we're independent at 21, but I don't know about you guys. I think we need our parents way beyond that age, right? Just for advice and for a home, for ensure we have a bed to sleep on sometimes. And our youth continue to need those things. So adoption is possible again, and I really hope that for whoever's listening, if you're considering, or if you know someone who can consider fostering or adopting, there are lots of children in care who really need homes and families who are going to commit to them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's some powerful information, because it speaks to the work that many of you have done, are doing, I should say, from education, whether it's connecting mentors with mentees, putting children into the proper homes, coaching, whether you're coaching that individual or you're providing leadership, for that individual. That's critically important, or even as an educator where you're managing the school. But I want to go back to Vanessa. So what is the process of becoming a foster or a parent? Like, what is the process? What do you have to do? What's the first step? And are there resources?
There are resources. So you can definitely look at the New Jersey Department of Children and Families website, and there's information there about how to become a licensed resource parent. And the process is very much the same for any relatives who are interested in caring for youth, as well as non-relatives. Everyone, who comes in to care for a child does have to become a licensed resource parent. That process requires a home assessment, background checks on all adults in the home. And, sometimes it is an intrusive process. It requires financial information, references, just looking at your space to ensure that you have the appropriate space to care for youth. So it is a process. Ordinarily, takes somewhere between 60 and 90 days to become licensed. And when individuals become foster parents, they're usually assigned to the local office of their county or area. So they would be supervised by a resource worker who would monitor the home and any potential children that go into the home. If an individual is interested in adoption, once they're going through that process, they can verbalize that they want to be a foster adopt home, which means that, they would be considered for the possible adoption of children that are placed in their home if the case gets to that point. We also have families at adoption operations who are licensed specifically for adoption only. So they're kept, you know, in a registry just to potentially, they fill out forms saying the types of the ages of the youth that they would consider, characteristics of youth that they would consider, and then we potentially look at children who are awaiting adoption to match families and see if they would consider, you know, specific youth. So there's different opportunities to either foster only, foster adopt, or do adoption only.
Thank you. Carlos, what do you have to do to become a mentor?
So it can be a simple thing. Just log into our website and we will follow up with you. Essentially, it's getting to know you as a volunteer, as a person. So we will do an in-person interview. We'll do reference check, background checks, and all that. But it's really just to understand your story as a person, entering a conversation with another person. So then we, on the other side, we get to know the child, talking to their parent or guardian at home, their school as well. We have a very thought out intake process. And then at the end of this, then we based on common interests and commonalities, will suggest the relationship between a big brother potentially and a little brother. And then over time, this is supported by a professional staff. We have a mentor manager that will oversee the relationship blossom over time and kind of like suggest things, suggest activities that resonate with that child and also resonate with that volunteer mentor. So it's very tailor-made. I want to go back to just a quick point. You know, I think Alterice Frazier was talking about how he had never, what his fatherhood means to him, and the movement line here, and that he had never met his father, right? And that he had to create his own definition. And I think Desmond was hitting upon this too. Our children have these wonderful voices that maybe have yet to blossom into the world. And so for me, fatherhood at its core is just fine-tuning your ears and your eyes to see that child, hear their voice, the subtle thing, and embrace that with love to have it blossom into the big things. Hey, have them amplify their own voice. So it's like having them create their own definition of what manhood is for them, and having that supporting, loving structure to kind of be in tune with those things. And so the thing is, anyone could be a big brother or big sister in our program, and we train people, we support people to have those accentuated hearing points, those accentuated eye points, to be able to see that child's individuality, blossom it into their own adulthood. The core requirement is only 4 hours a month for 1 year to be a mentor in the program. So it's essentially like 1 hour a week. That's the baseline. And what we see over time is that it turns into much more than that. So in the front end of the relationship, the first 3 to 4 months, research shows that it's sometimes awkward. I'll be honest with you, right? You're getting to know, and to the point raised earlier by Vanessa, you know, some of our kids come to the table with overpromised and underdelivered experience. Right? So they're show up. You said next week, I'll see. You know, and then if you show up, then over time, you know, we all have our masks, right? Like we all, I love to see one back here, right? I think we all have our own masks, but over time, when you start humanizing each other in this experience, the masks come off. The ice thaws a little bit. And so over time, it will be less about that, and it's more about a natural flow. So I did the 4 hours. A year later, if we do it right, it's not about the 4 hours anymore. It's about, you know, 4 hours were done, but I know you had that one test that you were scared about. We have this one basketball game. I'm still going to show up. And then it just melds into each other's lives. And that's the blessing, frankly, of a true critical mentoring relationship. So 4 hours a month for 1 year is the baseline. Just sign up through our website and we'll get you started.
Hey, well said, Carlos. Very well said. And, you know, going back to what Desmond had said earlier about the spirit, your spirit's there, and the love. If those two things are in that person, he can go a long way with mentorship.
Yeah, that's why I want to tie in Desmond, because the mentorship, and then having a father in the household, and then it goes down to how they perform in the classroom. You know, how they perform, you know, in terms of the academic performance, how they perform, you know, in life. Like Desmond, can you give some light to that in terms of, you know, a child who does have a father in the household, who has those sort of touch points, a mentor outside the household, as you know, as Freelda Rufus Johnson said about that one person that he missed outside the 1,000 that he caught. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, the data tells us that kids' their social emotional development is heightened when both parents are in the picture, and there's also some data to suggest that they're all academic outcomes, whether that be their GPA, college acceptance, SAT scores, are higher when both parents are in the home. So again, it's I'm kind of echoing what the panel said. It's we know the benefits of having critical mentorship and having fathers in the picture. The question is, what do we do to avoid and end racism and replace it with a system of justice, right? I think that's what the conversation ultimately turns to, because my children are very young, right? Tariq, our children are essentially the same age, and this third act of my life, I would like to hope that I can work to end some of the things that this generation and that my parents' generation were dealing with, to the degree that my children are not dealing with those things. Like I shudder to think of a world where my two daughters feel as though there are no men available, right? And I know if you guys don't remember, there was a New York Times article, I believe it was either in 2014 or 2015, but it talked about some substantial research of approximately 1.5 million African American males missing from society, either via early death or the prison industrial complex. So, what are we doing in our schools? What are we doing in our community? What are we doing in our churches? What are we doing at a policy level to ensure that people can live in this idea of an American dream? Because if we are in fact all Americans, then certainly we can agree that this is a problem that needs to be addressed. And if it's not something that can be addressed at a policy level, which I'm skeptical of at this point, as an African American male, I say we need to fund our own freedom and create sub-institutions amongst ourselves that are ensure that these are not conversations that our children are having in 20 to 25 years.
Well, Desmond, you said something that's very correct about the policy. We have so many policies on our books all throughout the country, but I'm just speaking locally, that are done for a photo op and things of that nature, but there's no follow through. There's no one making sure that these things are put into place like they should. And it's sad, but it's reality, what you said about the policies. We can't trust policies because there are people that do it just for the sake of getting some photo ops.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to bore people, but I spend way too much time reading than I should, but there's a book by Derek Bell called Faces at the Bottom of the Well. And he was a law professor, and it's a collection of short stories, but one of the first short stories, he talks about this notion of legislating away racism, right? Through policy and federal and state laws and things like that. And it paints a very grim picture of, trying to get people to do the right thing, trying to get people to do the moral thing based on written laws. And Rufus, to your point, I think we just need to be working on multiple fronts. I think the work that we're doing, that this panel is doing, is very important. No buts about that. That work is very important. At the same time, we really need to think about the education that happens to our children in school, because school is the incubation of society. And what we bake in that oven of school is ultimately what gets eaten at the table of society. So we have to be rethinking about what school looks like for disenfranchised or vulnerable or whatever euphemism we want to use to say the majority of people on this planet who are Black and brown, who are classified as minorities. Like we have to think differently about how we educate and where we educate our children, so we can work around these notions of you're supposed to, I'm talking about this from the perspective of a Black woman, but you're supposed to go to college and graduate and be single and be a cat mom, or all of these silly notions that some of the young girls that I mentor are saying, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be, Mr. Williams. Like there's so much work to be done at so many different levels. It's too complex to talk about in this one panel, right?
Well, can I just offer one thing? I know I overrate. So two things. I want to I want to lift up two things. First of all, it's not lost on me, given the craziness and the narrative is being hijacked by so many others, that thank you, Al Tariq, for creating the space and affirming the assets of our community, the positivity of our community, and leading by example. And Freeholder, you've been doing it all your life. And it's such a blessing to share and lift up, frankly, the beauty that comes out of our community. And Desmond, it's an honor to meet you as well. And that's I'm considering adopting. I'm going to reach out to you. And Deborah, thank you so much for facilitating this. Then secondly, I want to say that the platform of
Carlos, I think you pressed the wrong button at the wrong time.
Yeah, I think he's still with us, but he muted his
he muted himself and his picture
muted
too.
his camera. Yeah.
Oh, he bumped out by accident. I kind of want to tie this. I know we're bumping up into the 1 o'clock hour. I know Vanessa has some. I think she has something to do at 1, and we're actually holding it longer. But this conversation is definitely more than a 1 hour conversation. This is like a series of conversations that need to happen. And I know one of the reasons why I wanted to initiate this, and also my part. Carlos, my bad.
No, that's my fault. I apologize. And then just
I'm gonna stop. Wait, go ahead and finish. Go ahead.
Oh, just so in the spirit of, frankly, the of our community, there's a hashtag that a few folks in Newark are launching for Father's Day, and it's Black Dad Challenge. Tamara Fleming and a number of others are sending it out in our community. It's really highlighting great pictures of our fathers being great fathers. So affirming the blessing of solid dads, and that's the majority of the story. I know we narrow in on the need and the call to action, and that's been, frankly, that's my work. That's a lot of the work and the people on this panel. But I also want to it's not lost on me that there's so many great fathers out there doing God's work, amazing work, and pouring into their family with the struggles and the blessings all combined. And so I want to lift up, and I'm trying to do this as well with our families that have wonderful fathers. The hashtag is Black Dad Challenge, and just toss out on social media on Father's Day within our community. Just wonderful pictures of the positivity of wonderful men being great fathers. Period. End of story. Of course, I have a qualification trying to fill the gap, but we should also lift up those positive men being great fathers.
Thank you, Carlos.
Al Tariq, one last thing. I think you should introduce Desmond to Al Tariq White.
Sure. I know Al Tariq White. Tariq introduced us. You introduced us about 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
It's been a while since Mr. White and I have spoken, but we broke bread a few times. Yeah,
he's another one that came through my programs when he was young too.
So this is
to move to Newark and go through the program.
We have some available homes,
Yes.
So I know we want to tie this in, and also we have to leave. It's 1 o'clock. Vanessa, before we leave, can you please let us know how can we get in contact with you? Is there any information that we need to know before we leave for the day at all?
you had asked me a question before just about resources, and so I wanted to just kind of talk really quickly in regards to anyone who's fostering through our department. There's always a caseworker assigned to youth who are in care, and the caseworker serves as really that middle person who refers to agencies who are contracted through us for any necessary services. Also, I just wanted to point out that for families who have finalized adoptions, there is the New Jersey Adoption Resource Clearinghouse, which is also referred to as NJ Arch, who provides free services for families in New Jersey. So I just wanted to provide that information. Their phone number is 1-877-427-2465, and their website is www.njarch.org. And also Perform Care, who's our New Jersey system of care for any necessary mental health services. And that's actually available to all families in New Jersey, not just families that are involved with child welfare. And that program specifically provides any behavioral mental health services or services for children with any emotional challenges, as well as crisis intervention. And their contact number is 1-877-652-7624. And again, I actually can be directly reached via my email, which is Vanessa, VANESSA .Merced, MERCED. The Swazo is not included in my email, and it's at dcf.nj.gov.
Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate your time and this is your email address, right? Correct. Vanessa.Merced.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. Carlos, what do we do next? What can we do?
So 4 hours a month for a year to become a big brother. We need more men to step up. We have 400 boys on our wait list. It's a call to action. Each one, reach one. And we will specially train you, we'll vet you, we'll support you throughout the process. But again, we can all make a difference in the life of a child. And that's how, frankly, it'll make a difference in your life too. So it's a two-way road, and it's a major call to action in our community. www.bigsandkids.org is our website. And honestly, in this remote learning space, we've seen an increased disconnection from our community and our kids to academics. And so the world has been exposed to remote learning, and there have been troubles across the country, but it's most pronounced in our communities. And so, frankly, the connection between what we're seeing on the ground now, our children who are at home and their parents are essential workers, the bus driver, they can't work from home. They can't ensure that their child is logged in and maintaining their online presence at school. They don't have the tutors to help support it. So in academic world, there's this thing called summer slide. Well, I'm calling this the COVID slide. And this COVID slide is going to not only end in June now, but it's going to be in September and October, November, because people are talking about how this is going to linger into next year. And so the correlation between what we're seeing on the ground now and the increased disconnection to academics over time might project into, frankly, one of the biggest graduation dropout rates that we have yet to see. And so we can all help be part of the solution by having increased positive attachment, increased accountability, and that's the power of mentoring. That's what we all can do. There are many other answers to the problem and in the challenge: increased guidance, counselors, and increased attention and formal support in schools. But we can all be mentored. And so this is how we can kind of be part of the solution. But frankly, what we see on the ground with this remote learning has been particularly pronounced in our communities, Black and Brown communities, and the kids we serve. And I fear how that projects out into the dropout rates over time. And that would have a devastating effect to those children, as well as our economy, our life, American society.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Desmond, what do we do next?
I think that the easy answer is to get involved. And, I think it was Martin Luther King said, if you're going to be a street sweeper, be a great street sweeper.
Yeah.
So if you don't necessarily need to be a doctorate, or you don't necessarily need to have, hundreds of $1,000s in your pocket to fill the void in the community. The only thing you need to do is be yourself, right? So if we're talking about mentoring the kid down the street, or mentoring a cousin who you haven't spoken with in some time, there is a need, and it's not really hard to find. But I would simply say, in terms of this initiative around fatherhood and being there for the physical, the spiritual, the emotional guidance, you just simply need to get involved.
Thank you very much. Freelda Johnson, what do we do next?
Well, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get in touch with Chris first, because I want to even look at some of the training that they're going to do for mentors. I think I can possibly help them by coming in and speaking to some of those, and really kind of giving them some from my experiences what they could do and how they could go about it, because sometimes we can put stuff in some notes and say this is the way we're going to do it, but times have changed. Times have changed within the last 10 to 15 years on how our kids react and what they do and how they do it, and we got to just be able to change with the times and make sure that we are hitting the right keys to make that piano play.
Thank you very much. I put Altry Witcher, he has a community-based program called Newark Hub on the Facebook page. And he's asking people to reach out to him as well. He has a studio, he has a daily program, and he's looking to also fill the void of mentorship as well. So if you have the ability to send him an email, please do so as well. And also a Big Brothers Big Sister. I think I put that email up there for those who are looking for information. How do I get in contact with Big Brother Big Sister? Please make sure you reach out and become a mentor. The other part is also we have a I'll be remiss to say I have a friend who is an author, Desmond Williams. It's an excellent book. I'm a proud owner of the book. He has this little educator shirt on in the back. But make sure you pick up this book. And also for those who are great fathers who are doing the right thing, join the Black Dad Challenge. It's our responsibility to change the paradigm or create the paradigm we want the world to see. We want to make sure that we are uplifting each other, not pushing each other down.
Right.
And also those individuals who are looking to become a dad, who are saying, listen, I want to step in and I want to help those young people who are currently in need of a space that I can, fill. Please reach out to Vanessa. Make sure you utilize her and the services that they provide, because we definitely have a lot of children who are teenage boys in our community who are looking for a home. And so don't ignore them. They exist in our community. If we have the space, help provide that space if we can. And to Carlos' perspective, there's a lot of children who need mentors. And to give further context as to why this conversation happened, I was simply in a park and I bumped into, actually I was running around, that's how fast I run. Carlos' employee. And sorry, Des. And so we were talking, and she was saying that we need 300 mentors for the mentees that are out there in our community. And then also I thought about, we have to do something about it. And also thought about the excellent fathers that I had an opportunity to bump into in life, like Rufus, like my partner DeVero. And I wanted to say that it's important for us to talk about the great things that we do, that we just happen to do on a normal basis, not because we need fanfare, but we just want to raise excellent children. And so this conversation was critically important for us to have. And so please, if you have any pictures, put on the Black Dad Challenge. But also, I appreciate everything that you guys are doing in our community. to keep our communities whole by pushing our children to the next level of their development. And I want to celebrate you. Enjoy your Father's Day weekend. DeVero, enjoy your Father's Day weekend as well. And also Vanessa, thank you for creating fathers, in our community, making sure children are placed in the right homes and providing the resources they need. Carlos, thank you for being a person that's able to be a connector, looking for children who need mentors, and you're finding an ability to screen and putting those in front of children who are in need, and you also feel that source. Desmond, thank you for, all the work that you do in the Washington, D.C. community and allowing your work to spread beyond that D.C. community to now going throughout the country with your book and with your mentorship, mentoring principals, mentoring scholars who are looking to help, our children. And Rufus, thank you for Redman. Thank you for doing it all. Thank you for Alterique White. Thank you for myself. Thank you for Mubby. Thank you for all of the people that you mentor through every avenue that you're able to touch and bless our young people. Thank you very much. Enjoy your Father's Day weekend, everyone.
You also.
Thank you.
Have a blessed day. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, we're going to steal you, Desmond. We're going to steal you in Newark. We're going to bring you to Newark, man.
You know what? There's a brother that I know via Twitter. He's an educator.
We're still live though, so just to give you guys a heading up.
Okay, yeah. His name escapes me right now, but I told him that I was going to come to Newark this summer because he just bought a really small vacant lot, and he's planting fruits and vegetables in the garden. He's starting a community garden, and he was essentially looking for donations for people to do kind of some of the hard labor to do some of the planting. So at some point this summer, I'll be headed that way. I'm waiting on his call, but I mean, Tariq knows my first time coming to Newark was in the Thanksgiving of 1998.
It's been a long time, man. Been a long time.
It is. I'm in this broadcast right here live, okay? But you guys can still talk.
Yeah.
Yes.